My name is Chris, and today we're going to go over my top 5 favorite Halloween songs of all time. Welcome to the Vinyl Attack. This video is sponsored by Skillshare. Ask any of your friends, or if you're young, ask an adult, and they'll tell you that over time your tastes will change. While the common misconception has been repeated numerous times that your taste buds change every 7 years, that's not really the case. They actually change every couple of weeks. The foundation of the 7-year change myth is that all of our cells regenerate in roughly that time frame. While this doesn't mean that the legendary McRib will taste different every time you eat it, it does hold light to the fact that we change, our tastes change, and we'll experience that in small and major ways for the rest of our lives. When I was a child, as with most children I'd assume, Christmas was by far my favorite holiday. As an adult, however, well, it actually hasn't changed one bit. I still love that holiday and I look forward to it every year. But as time has marched on, Halloween has become a very special time of the year for me. Today, as I look back on it, I have a host of wonderful memories, from being young and getting dressed up to go get candy, to the later adult-oriented costume parties in which we lose our inhibitions, even if for only one night. When putting Halloween and music together, one might assume that what music a person likes would also change over the years. But in a strange case of stasis, the songs I loved when I was younger that associate my memories of Halloween haven't changed one bit. Sure, some years I might be more in the mood for one over the other, but this list of 5 songs has stood the test of time with me, and I thought it would be an appropriate time to share them with you. Besides, while I adore doing product reviews, every now and again it's good to take a break from them for a moment to remind myself just why I do them in the first place: the music. So with the preamble out of the way, here are my top 5 favorite Halloween songs of all time. Keep in mind that while this list does have an order, it is not to try and denote which song is better. I generally don't believe in such things unless you're comparing like-for-like subjects. This is simply my preference. In addition, with a totalitarian-like restriction on playing music on YouTube, leaving me unable to share bits of these songs in this video, I have created a playlist with them on Spotify. The link to that is in the description below, so you can listen at your leisure. Number 5, Fear of the Dark by Iron Maiden. Growing up in the 80s and at the height of the satanic panic, there were several bands that would have your parents in fits if you tried to listen to their music, let alone actually own any of their albums. Ozzy Osbourne, AC/DC, Motley Crue, and Iron Maiden, just to name a few. While I would come to absolutely love and adore Akadaka, as the Aussies call them, Ozzy was never quite my style, as I just didn't care for his voice. And Motley Crue wore makeup. And not the cool kind of makeup that Kiss were wearing, but girl makeup. I just couldn't get into that. Iron Maiden, however, were right up there with Metallica, the Misfits, and the Ramones for me. Dangerous songs written by what looked to be dangerous people in a time where social media didn't exist, so secondhand tales of a band turned into myth and legend over time. Sure, Ozzy was more dangerous with the whole bat-biting thing, but he sure didn't look the part. And Maiden's mascot? Forget about it. Nothing was cooler than a good drawing of Eddie on your notebook to let your classmates know just who you were. I was a bit older in '92 when Fear of the Dark came out, being in the middle of my high school career, so the childhood myths weren't quite as frightening as they once were, but that damn album cover was just so cool. Eddie as some sort of tree demon, quite literally growing out of it in the pale blue shades of night, and a full glowing moon ominously looming down over the whole scene. It was spectacular, and it made me want to listen all the more. The title track, which is last on the album and number 5 on this list, had something to cover all the bases. A melodic intro to set the tone in the key of D minor, searing guitars that take over the clean intro while being backed by Steve Harris's driving bass, and Nico McBrain, how's that for a Halloween name, never overplays his part, yet keeps a powerful and driving tempo all the way up to the halftime feel later in the song. There are excellent guitar leads, blazing vocals by Bruce Dickinson, who was in perfect form for this album, and it all added up to not only a great metal song, but a song with grim character. The overall theme, of course, is being afraid of the dark, which, while not directly related to Halloween, especially considering it was released in May of that year, is a topic that has always had me associated with the holiday. Something about the tale of a man whose paranoia of the unknown that just watches him connected with the spooky season and is on regular rotation during the month of October around my house. There are several live and cover versions of this song out there, and I would invite you to look around and check some out. A particular variant that you may enjoy was done by Blaze Bayley and Doro Pesh. For this list, however, I've included the original version in the playlist. Well, the 2015 remaster of the original, but that's what was available on Spotify. Number 4, Halloween by the Misfits. Sure, this one is a little on the nose when it comes to songs about Halloween or songs that remind you of Halloween, but honestly, can you really tell yourself that this incredibly short piece isn't a classic at this point? Clearly, Glenn Danzig is a fan of Halloween in not only its modern iteration, but of the classic pagan festival of Samhain to which it's related. After all, that's what he called his next band after leaving the Misfits in 1983. Without going into a giant diatribe of the history of the modern Halloween and its ancient connections, I'll just say that releasing a song called Halloween on Halloween leaves little need for interpretation about its subject matter, even if it is indeed a much darker tale that twists the common sights of the modern holiday. The Misfits were a band that flew under the radar at my house. They didn't receive much airtime on the local or national news, which is where my parents derived the majority of their information onto the bad bands to which I should not be listening. So I was able to speak about them a little more freely and even listen to them with a little less caution. Now, I'm not saying that my parents were some sort of moral extremists or anything of the like. They just didn't want their young children listening to music that was too adult in nature for them. Quite frankly, as a parent myself, I completely understand. Hell, I didn't even make a fuss about it back then. I just hid the cassettes I'd acquired from trading with the neighborhood kids and only played them when I knew it was safe. All that aside, had they known about the Misfits, their range of topics, and certainly their lyrics, I'd have a much deeper understanding of the song London Dungeon, as this stuff was not kid-friendly. The song Halloween, in its brief 1 minute and 46 or 47 seconds, depending on which version you find, tackled some pretty grim topics. Dead cats, burning bodies, candy apples and razor blades, and yet, I still can't seem to go one Halloween season without listening to it. Clearly, the lyrics are a fantastical diatribe that are meant to shock and awe their listener, but that was also the nature of the band. Horror movies were a common theme for the Misfits, and if you didn't take their music with a grain of salt, you certainly weren't going to like it. For me, once again though, it was all about the mascot, at least at first. The quick, sharp, and poignant music instantly made sense to me, along with the almost crooning nature of Glenn's baritone and tenor vocals, but if there was a mascot, if that's even the right word, that was cooler than Eddie, it was the Fiend. Of course, this is just an image of the Crimson Ghost, the title character from a serial film from 1946, but I didn't know that at the time, and I sure didn't care. It was the coolest looking skull logo I had ever seen, and when matched up with the typeface used for their name, it was a package that was impossible to resist. While there are, again, a number of cover versions available of this song, the version I've chosen to include in the playlist below is from the Misfits box set released in 1996. Of the versions available on Spotify, I definitely think this one captures the raw energy of the song, but also has the most balanced mix. Number 3, Pet Sematary by the one and only Ramones. Moving from one legendary punk band to the legendary punk band, I can remember the very first time I saw the Ramones. Not in person, mind you, but it also wasn't in a magazine, it was on television. I was on vacation with my family somewhere in northern Michigan, and while everyone else was out having fun at the beach, I was getting in touch with my inner rebel by staying back at the cabin and watching TV. Probably because it had limited cable channels and we had none at home. Very exciting, I know. I wish I could tell you what channel and what show came on, but sadly I don't remember. All I remember were these 4 guys in leather jackets doing a brief interview about their latest song called Pet Sematary for none other than Stephen King's latest movie of the same name. Now, I couldn't tell you if this show was a rerun or what the deal was, as it was released in late April of 1989, and I'm sure we weren't on vacation until June, but I can tell you that it changed my life. I was 15 at the time and squarely in the middle of my formative years. While my mother wasn't thrilled that I was reading a lot of Stephen King at that age, she was happy that I was reading, so she let it slide. I was also discovering new music all the time, and punk rock was a mainstay in my rotation. Putting my, at the time, favorite author together with this band I'd never heard of, or, well, maybe heard of but not heard, was simply an alignment of the planets. There was a quick 1, 2, 3, 4 counted off, and the band leapt into the fastest, most raucous sound I'd ever seen in person, or on television. Keep in mind that I was 15, and there wasn't a chance that I was going to be able to see any concerts of the bands I liked. I also had no bootleg VHS tapes because there were none to be found, so this completely random happenstance had me viewing live and in color, or rerun and in color, the most exciting musical thing I'd ever seen in my life. I was really starting to take my guitar playing seriously at this point, and I spent hours trying to make sure I could play that brilliant yet simple opening phrase. The drums were just straightforward and fast. The bass didn't do anything fancy. There was no guitar solo. It went against almost everything I'd ever heard until that point, and I loved every second. Couple that with the fact that the song is just damn good in both lyrical and vocal performance, and it's no wonder it stuck with me until this very day. Again, this isn't necessarily a Halloween song, but go and listen to Joey Ramone's mix of slightly sad yet slightly angry voice in this song and tell me it doesn't strike a melancholy tone with you. It evokes emotion, it ignites the imagination, it tells a complete 3-act tale, and it does it all in 3.5 minutes. Not a shock if you're a fan of the Ramones, but if you haven't heard this song for some reason, now is definitely the time. I must say that I didn't much care for the latest cover of the song and the 2019 remake of the movie, but you might, so take a listen and see what you think. For this playlist, I took the version directly from the album Brain Drain, on which it was originally released. The entire album is excellent, and in an ironic twist, ends with yet another holiday song, this time about Christmas. Number 2, The Halloween Theme by John Carpenter. If the song Halloween by the Misfits is a little on the nose, then this piece of music by movie legend John Carpenter is the head upon which that nose sits. Okay, maybe that's a bit of a ridiculous analogy, but it is absolutely one of the most immediately recognizable scores in all of film, and it also sets the tone for the season as soon as you hear the first note play. Done completely with synthesizers, which is a relatively newer format with which to work at the time, and completely new to Carpenter himself, the driving, pulsing backbeat pushes the music forward with the feel of a quickening pulse or the unrelenting drive to kill that throbs in whatever passes for a mind in Michael Myers. Carpenter composed the piece using 2 classical music techniques that can put the listener off tilt without them even knowing. The time signature, which is a 5/4 time, is an irregular time with which to compose, and the tritone of notes used for the theme. The tritone, which is the interval of notes that are 3 steps apart, is known for being quite dissonant in their sound, which makes them unsettling and creates tension. Additionally, this is also why the tritone is known as the devil's interval in music. Seems fitting for a piece of music that's meant to embody the tale of a serial killer. Few pieces of music have so quickly and unmistakably evoked a particular feeling or mood as soon as they start. Psycho, Jaws, Star Wars, Halloween. While almost no film critics will put Halloween in the same class as the aforementioned giants, fans of the movie and the score know exactly what I'm talking about when I say that this theme stands tall amongst all of the greats. Carpenter has gone on record saying that when he showed a final cut of the film without the music to a young executive from 20th Century Fox, she wasn't scared in the least with what she was shown. The film looked almost campy with a bunch of young girls running from a guy in coveralls and a silly mask. But when the film was shown again to the same exec, after simply adding the music, she loved the movie. This alone goes to show the power and emotion that music can bring, and it's probably why for me, and a vast amount of others, that the Halloween theme is a quintessential piece of music as soon as the leaves start to turn and the weather gets colder. While there have been many updates and cover versions of this song that all have their own voice and tone about them, I've included the original in this playlist as I feel it has the most emotion of them all. Its raw, sparse notes and tone match with the gritty run-and-gun film style which with the movie was shot. Before we get to my top all-time Halloween song, I'd like to take a quick moment to talk about today's sponsor, Skillshare. Listen, we all know commercials suck, but for me, nothing has been more irritating as of late than to be right in the middle of a show on YouTube only to be interrupted by a completely random and irrelevant commercial that breaks the flow of the episode and offers nothing in return. This is why I don't have ads in the middle of my YouTube videos. So, rather than stuff a meaningless ad down your throat, I'd much prefer to show you something that you might actually like and that also resonates with me. Enter Skillshare. If you're not familiar with Skillshare, they're an online learning community that offers thousands of inspiring classes for creative and curious people alike. If you're like me, and I know I am, learning new things all the time is almost as much of a passion as hi-fi systems and record collecting. I've already started a deep dive into several classes in hopes of elevating the quality of this channel, which clearly benefits us both. I myself have been taking classes on Skillshare, and my latest aims to help me learn a new editing software to which I'd like to switch. Oliver Astrologo's 4 essential post-production techniques have helped me pare down what's essential in this stage of the edit while leaving out the unnecessary steps for my particular workflow. Skillshare isn't just for people who want to be public content creators either. If you're into photography, illustration, creative writing, even marketing or productivity, Skillshare has a class for you taught ad-free by creators who really know their stuff. And right now, if you're one of the first 1,000 subscribers to click the link in the description below, you'll get a free 1-month trial. Not 7 days, not even 14 days, which is their standard, but a free 1-month trial to check out all the classes and topics Skillshare has to offer. So as you're on your way down to the comments section to tell me what your favorite Halloween songs are, make sure you click on the link in the description box to take advantage of this offer, and thanks to Skillshare for making it possible. With the business side of things taken care of for the week, I present you with my #1 all-time favorite Halloween song, or composition as the case may be, Danse Macabre by Camille Saint-Saëns. Yeah, you probably didn't see that one coming. It's certainly a departure from the rest of this list, but this piece of music simply speaks to me on so many levels, and personally, nothing says Halloween season to me like this tone poem. That's right, long before Blue Note started reissuing jazz records under that label, and even long before Charles Lloyd released an album of the same name that inspired Blue Note, Camille Saint-Saëns wrote his tone poem masterpiece for orchestra in 1874 and released it to the world in January of 1875. It actually started out as more of an artistic song for voice and piano, with the lyrics being written by French poet Henri Cazalis. But Saint-Saëns expanded on the piece and reworked it using a solo violin to replace the vocal line. I think it is this particular detail that makes it sound so haunting to me, and why it's remained a favorite of mine for so many years. You can find the original poetry text fairly easy with a web search, and I do think it's worth a read. Interestingly, the opening harp note and subsequent fade-in of the orchestra reminds me of the opening notes in the piece titled Prelude for the remake of Battlestar Galactica series composed by Bear McCreary. Sure, there are differences in tempo and tone, but I think it's a fair assumption that Bear is a fan of Saint-Saëns and used pieces of the Danse Macabre as inspiration for his score. It would certainly explain how he's been a natural at scoring the macabre scenes in the Walking Dead television series. The tone poem also utilizes the tritone mode to create the dissonance and tension I discussed earlier, going to show just how powerful the interval is and how long it's been in use. The aforementioned harp note is played 12 times in the intro to signify the 12 strokes of the midnight bell when death appears on Halloween and calls forth the dead in the graveyard to dance for him while he plays his violin. The piece of music he plays, of course, is the violin solo heard in the Danse Macabre. All of these themes, along with the jarring and discordant melodies, make it the ideal playground for the imagination to run wild. The dancing skeletal bodies, the cold moonlit night with a pale sky and sparse wind-scattered clouds, dead dark leaves strewn about the ground while worn and fleshless bones make their mark in the cold damp soil, haunting yellow eyes in the trees witnessing every step. It gives me chills with every play, and I couldn't imagine a Halloween season without it. After its debut, there were several piano versions transcribed by very noted musicians of the day like Franz Liszt and Ernest Guiraud, but I find that the orchestral version is by far my personal favorite. I listened to several of these on Spotify, and I included the one I thought best. The subtle intro, tone, and timbre of the violin on this Royal Stockholm Philharmonic performance just seemed to capture the mood best for me. You, however, might like the slightly more vibrato-induced violin and harsher sound of the Slovak Symphony Orchestra that do seem to capture the idea of Death playing the violin with his cold dead hands and not being a smooth and steady endeavor. I'd encourage you to listen to several and see what you think. And after you've done that, and perhaps listen to the other selections I've made for this list, I'd love to know what songs are your absolute musts when it comes to Halloween. Leave me a comment down below and let's have a chat about it. Thank you very much for stopping by. Have a fun and safe Halloween, and I look forward to next time.